Hi. I guess I just wanted to, and if we have time, share some reflections because I actually came back from Afghanistan on Monday. I went to visit my family just due to some personal reasons, and it was very, very confusing for my brain to kind of, for context, my family lives in the capital city, and we were able to go outside, but myself and my younger cousins did have to make sure we were fully covered up, and also that there was, if not an older female relative with us, but a trusted taxi driver or a male relative, whether that be older or younger. But there was also just this sense of, I guess, this ominous feeling, and it was quite sad to see, I guess, the poverty on the streets. Like, I had children walking up to me and asking for money, and I guess in some ways what I said at the beginning about going out in public is a bit of a privileged stance, but it was just very confusing because of what I know is happening in the country, and just, I guess, the juxtaposition, I would say. And yeah, my cousin was also telling me, she was there at the universities on the day that the Taliban came in, and she was telling me she was in the middle of an exam and they had 10 minutes to complete their exam papers and hand it back, and they don't even know when. I think it's obvious that they won't go back to university. I don't think that from my analysis, I don't think the Taliban will let them go back, but they don't even know what's happening. But also what, as they were saying before about the only difference being now is that we have the connection to technology. I think that is also something I kind of see, from what the stories of my parents told me, because they left in the early to mid 90s. It seems quite similar, but like she was saying before, the only difference is technology, and I don't feel like the world is reporting enough on it, because even when I was there was an explosion in one of the districts, not the one that I was in, but I could only find one article on that when I was in Afghanistan, and when I came here to search for it because I was curious, I couldn't find that. And it's just, it's really sad, I guess. But one sort of positive I have kind of seen is with technology, things like English classes and stuff can be done online, but that's also very precarious, because you hear in other countries of internet shutdowns and stuff. And that was just a few reflections. Sorry for taking up time.
No, it's very important. These reflections and narratives are the ones that tell us what's happening on the ground. So thank you for popping in and having a chat with us. And this is a very worrying situation about whether the internet, because if they do have a connection, then the situation is different. But whether Taliban keeps the internet is another question.
As Najan said, and also this whole notion of we looking at practicalities. Well, in looking at the bigger picture, I mean, what practically everyone is looking as of ways to sort of look at the positivities. Many says that there is an end of war in Afghanistan, at least. There's not many people killed as it used to be, for example, during the intervention and also the Taliban's war. But also, yes, there might be a reducing of statistics in how many soldiers are going to be killed on the battlefield. But the end of war militarily in Afghanistan does not mean an end of war for women. One thing.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. Secondly, for how long are we going to look at so-called innovative ways to sort of find ways to to like technology. Now we are so desperate that we look at technologies as a way to sort of do something positive, right? I mean, I'm myself involved and leading a grassroots organization in Afghanistan, in northern and central and Kabul, supporting women and girls. But we try to work around things, or around the Taliban's restriction, to reach out to women, help them, especially with employment and education. But for how long can we do this? Looking for sort of desperate innovation to do online schooling or online classes. Could it replace formal schooling? No, it cannot. And also, this is where I want to come back, like the war in Afghanistan has been going on for more than 4 decades. Just in my own lifetime, there has been 4 or 5 regimes changing, collapsing, and the next one coming. Taliban is not going to last long. It's not going to be the end of it, but what we do, what the international community do, the approaches that they take will contribute in endurance of the Taliban regime. So as much as that there is a humanitarian crisis that we need to look for ways to connect to people to do something, but at the same time accommodate the Taliban, this is going to be problematic, and we need to take a much more sensitive approach that anything we do to help the people of Afghanistan should not benefit or in any way endure the Taliban regime. Because once the Taliban, like for example, the conversation that is going on right now that we need to unfreeze the funds for Afghanistan Central Bank, that goes to the government, to the Taliban government, and directly that also contributes to the Taliban's endurance of the regime. Or something like, okay, we don't have to sanction the Afghanistan, the Taliban regime, because it impacts the people, but not sanctioning also benefits the Taliban regime. Their grip to power, to state, it's going to be much more stronger, and later on it will be, you are only making our fight harder, the people of Afghanistan's fight harder to counter the Taliban, because the regime, look what's going on in Iran right now. Accommodating the Islamic Republic, and now how hard is it to get rid of them? The same way. So we are in a way, people who do talk about these things are being accused that we are not considerate of the humanitarian situation in the country. We are considerate, but we are only flagging that we should not make a rotten compromise with the Taliban that endures the regime, that makes our fight harder to change that regime, because there are no way for the Taliban to evolve. They have had chances. Last 20 years was a lot for the Taliban as a movement to change themselves, to evolve themselves, and accommodate and reflect the society in Afghanistan, the diverse communities in Afghanistan, so that could be much more appealing and much more sort of practical to rule the country. They're exclusive, they're abusive, they're oppressive, and they're also enabling some sort of genocide against minority groups such as the Hazaras. So how could we accommodate these things, right? And there's a lot of moral stain to take here, and I think we also need to look at Afghanistan in the bigger picture, in the historical context, and that the Taliban is not the end of it. Western countries are tired of being engaged in Taliban. They have no incentive to be to continue their engagement, but 40 million people live there. We live there, and we cannot allow this to happen, and this cannot be part of the international global order. Thank you.
Thank you. I just very quickly just wanted to clarify just my point around the using online technology just to do classes. My sort of thinking around that is based on my personal experience, just because I have different health problems and disabilities. So seeing that like available to me is a good thing based on my experiences. But I do agree with you in that it shouldn't be the only option, and there should definitely be like choice. And yeah, it shouldn't be something that replaces school, because like, when you don't have that choice And when you're stuck in the house and not able to, you know, exist outside of that, I think, yeah, that's it. Yeah, even from what I've heard from my family, that's quite, you know, a lot to deal with. And I think it's just very complicated. And I think you summed it up very, very well. So thank you.
To the speakers for your important insights. My name is Samira Nazar from the Australian National University. My area of research is on entrepreneurship, so therefore I have got a couple of questions in this regard to the speakers, but also to Husna. So one of my questions is regarding the men in Afghanistan. We have been talking about women supporting women from outside and within Afghanistan. I was wondering what the situation is like within Afghanistan and men who are not the Taliban, but the public. How is their approach towards supporting women in Afghanistan? Is there anything that you've heard? Do you have any information? And maybe this is something that Husna might also want to comment on because you were in Afghanistan recently. So I'm just wondering what the situation is like in terms of men supporting women in Afghanistan. And the second question is regarding women entrepreneurship in Afghanistan, because we have heard that women do not have access to economic activities in terms of employment. What does it look like in terms of self-employment? Are there women entrepreneurs on the ground who run their own businesses? What was your impression, Husna, and also the speakers, if you have got any information in this regard?
Very good questions. Thank you very much. Regarding men supporting women in Afghanistan, Afghanistan is a very traditional patriarchal society, but that also does not mean that there are not men that supports women's rights. There are many, but the way in which the environment is right now in Afghanistan, any men coming out speaking on against the Taliban rule, they get a knock on their door or breaking of their door the next day. We saw the example of Ustad Mashal from Kabul University, who spoke on the live on a news channel inside Afghanistan that he's against the Taliban's restriction on women's education in particular, and then he also had a very civil movement of selling, or not selling, like taking his books, giving his books out to women on the streets as an act of solidarity. And then he was detained the next day. Like right now, as we speak, his fate remains unknown. So, but unfortunately, on the grassroots level, like what we have seen in Iran, men going out with women and protesting, we have not seen so much inside Afghanistan. It's understandable because of two things: the severe restriction, number one, and then the consequences it has, such as imprisonment, lashing, and even killing of those men. And secondly, because of, unfortunately, a very patriarchal society. And regarding women entrepreneurs, I had friends inside Afghanistan who were women entrepreneurs. I knew the first woman in Afghanistan who opened a restaurant. They were sort of the leaders, the change makers in the grassroots. And with a ban on women employment, of course, they could not run their cafes and restaurants and their sort of boutiques of selling traditional dresses anymore. Some of them got out because they were well known and they were being targeted, but some of them who are still well known in their communities, in their street, in their neighborhood, because of their work as a woman during the Republican, but they still decided to stay back. I'm not going to name her because of her safety, but she's still working inside the country, running, having whatever savings she had from her entrepreneurships, from her work, doing classes for women, like jewelry classes, art classes, tailoring workshops, and even educational courses underground. So there are many, many examples or also cases that are happening, women entrepreneurs who had. First, what you need is money. You need some sort of financial budget to be able to run these things, right? In a country that, okay, right now, there's no income for them. But whoever had a saving, who have some sort of little bit of fund, they are doing it underground. They're not known. They can't put it online, and they're not being sort of seen. But they are working. And about how these entrepreneurs, whether they are being able to work right now publicly, no. Even things like rug weaving, which is only women rug weaving, are being stopped. As mentioned before, I was working with I'm working on a grassroots NGO. We were involved with women entrepreneurs weaving rugs and selling them in international market. They're not able to do it anymore because they're being stopped. The center got knocked on the door by the Taliban that they were given 24 hours. If you do not close this rug workshop that were run by women, and it was only women weavers in that workshop, they had to close it down. I mean, whether they would continue it in their homes, maybe. Whether they have that connection to sell it in the international market, yes, but how many could do that? We are speaking of Kabul, maybe possible, but how many women entrepreneurs in the provinces who have absolutely no connection to friends outside the country or networks to be able to sell their product? So yes, the Taliban policy affect anyone, and to that extent.
I just wanted to say that I second what I'm so sorry for Khondajan that I heard that. I was so proud of the work that you were doing with those women, income generation. And I also heard yesterday from one of the women activists that the similar tailoring workshop has been stopped by Taliban. They have been questioned and they have been taken. I have tweeted about this. I have retweeted this incident by one of the women activists from Afghanistan, that they had to say that please stop this teaching women skills of tailoring, as basic as it is, because it takes women outside of their house, and income generation is just zero in Afghanistan right now.
Very much, Dr. Nagar. Just adding to what Farkhondajan and Azadajan mentioned, of course, there are women entrepreneurs that have initiatives and businesses, but as covered before, it's just a law that preventing them to do when they can't go outside their home, when they are not allowed to work, when they are not allowed to go anywhere, how they can do their businesses. So this is the issue, that they stop all the work, and that's why they can't do anything. It's like not they have any initiative or any businesses in Afghanistan, but it's that they don't have the right to continue that.
We just came to my mind during the discussion that Azada and Farkhondajan had like previously around West just like deciding to selectively pay attention to human rights in different like parts of the world. So my question, like, because my professional like life is a very micro, exactly professional life in interaction with people. Like I'm a psychosocial counselor, so and I've worked with people from Afghanistan back in Iran and also like here in Australia. So it's like a very micro interaction that I have, but I have this understanding that how this macro issue is impacting people, not only just in Afghanistan, like I'm Iranian, and we all know that what is also going on in macro perspective in Iran is just not like the single issues happening there, but the macro thing is just like how West is approaching fundamental Islamists around the world. So my question is that any panelist like can answer to this question. So it's not directed to someone in particular, but I hope that I can have like some ideas around that. Why do you think West is doing this? Like, why do you think that West and general, like in, if we want to say like global North, developed countries, has this perspective around like having these selective
attention or just ignoring human rights violations by extreme or fundamental Islamists in Iran and in Afghanistan? Because I think the answer would be probably the same. So I'm going to ask about what are your thoughts about this in Afghanistan and about Taliban? Thank you.
Can I answer it very shortly, probably in one sentence? I think, and then the others, probably my colleagues can allude more. It's geopolitical interest. We know that, real politics. Why Taliban were abusing women and persecuting women in the 1990s as well, but why only post 9/11 they decided to intervene in Afghanistan. First priority was, of course, Western security being threatened, America's security being threatened from Afghanistan, one reason. But then they used the language and the narrative of human rights, right? Why they decided to negotiate with Taliban and did that the Doha Agreement, because it was not in the interest of the Americans to stay in the country beyond the time that they were. And human rights takes a backseat. It is not a priority. So I think the way in which the global order is designed, I mean, it's just, yeah, your security, the state's interest. But here, I think what we as scholars also want to argue that human security is as important as any other security, whatever. And the result we already saw in 9/11. And we saw the sanctuary that Taliban provided for terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda and themselves. And we saw the consequences on September 11, right? So, and unfortunately, the world has not learned its lessons. Human insecurity in one country can jeopardize the peace and security of the global world and also other nations. And I know this is a challenge for all of us to have this very big and hard debates about geopolitical interest, security, and how much this is tied to human rights and of the people overall. Yeah, thank you.
As Farhondajan said, it's all about the interest and the priorities. Of course, world is saying about seeing their own interest and also what is their priority. Is the Afghan women and Iranian women are right now priority for their interest or not? It's unfortunately it's all about that, and maybe it's these superpowers and the developed countries are having control over all the rights, international rights, and how they are controlling that to their own interest. For example, I was like international community and United Nations, what we expected them to do is they didn't, and they are silent. Why? Because it's all about the interest of superpowers and interest of the developed countries, not just about the people who are in developing countries. So yeah, definitely it's about the interest and the priorities.
One point on the last question that we talked, yes, it is about the strategic and geostrategic interest, but I don't think we should underestimate the value and the power of advocacy and the push from grassroots. One of the reasons that, I mean, look at the way, for example, Iranian communities have been pushing it, and they have been successful in a lot of things internationally. And I have always believed that Afghanis and Iranian women, when they are together, they have a huge power. And I think a lot of times we should advocate for each other and fight for each other and make sure that these lobbyings is not only exclusive, it's about women, as many of you mentioned, and we actually want to do it for the world. Like, this matters to us because it's a matter of our security, on human security, on the security and safety of us in where we are and in the countries that we live. So I actually think that the important point for us is also say that, yes, the structures of international security are very patriarchal. They are actually old. They were built in Second World War and they have never been changed, and our problems are different. And so there are all these issues, but I think the reason that we get together and we spend time and we spend a lot of our lives advocating for these things is because there is an innate love for human rights and justice in all of us. So thank you very much, everyone. On that note, thank you very much, Farhonde, Parisa, Azadeh, for being such amazing speakers, for your patience. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is the first of the 3 series. So we come back in a couple of weeks with second series, and we talk about different aspects of Afghanistan, and we still continue to have Voices of Women. So thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.